Everything that you think or feel at any given moment is the truth to a part of you. It just might not be the truth to your adult self. What we do is our systems are always making sense of everything. It's an adaptive strategy. We look out to the world and we say, this must be my truth because it's what I'm currently experiencing. And then we think that truth is our adult selves' truth when so often it isn't. When so often it's actually the truth of that younger part of ourselves. We must understand who adult me is versus who all the parts are. Who am I? And how do I find out who that version of me actually is? Welcome to You Make Sense. This podcast is a manual to understanding your human experience so that you can navigate the world with freedom, ease, empowerment, and create the life that you desire. Remember, you make sense. All parts, always. So if you ever find yourself questioning who you are or what your truth is, this episode is for you. We're going to decode why this happens to so many of us. And then, like always, I'm going to give you some tangible things you can do to come back into who you are and come back into your anchored truth. So many of us have experiences where in certain areas of our life, we might feel like one version of ourselves. Let's say in my work, I feel like this version of me. But then when it comes to being in my family of origin, that me in my work flies out the window and I no longer seem like or feel like the adult that I am. And I feel like this different version of me. I do things and say things I wouldn't normally say. And then in romantic relationships, I'm an entirely different version of me. And then maybe with your animal, you're a totally different version of you. It can be really confusing. Who am I? And how do I find out who that version of me actually is? We're going to uncover that today. And in tandem, we're also going to look at how do I know what my truth is? We might really find ourselves oscillating in experiences of feeling super anchored in our truth. And then all we have to do is see one thing on Instagram and all of a sudden that flies out the window and we think, oh my gosh, that must not be my truth. This relationship is wrong for me. A moment ago, I thought it was really right. But because of that 30-second reel I watched by this person who does not know me or my partner or my relational experience, now I think the relationship is wrong. Or I share something with a friend that I feel really convicted about. And because they're telling me my truth isn't right, now I no longer believe that it is. So it can be very common to find ourselves oscillating between what our truth actually is. So let's get into it. Why do we find ourselves experiencing drastically different versions of self? So I want to talk about two different categories of you. First, we have true you. Who you actually are, who you came into this world as, and who you began to grow and develop to be. That's the you we want to find and uncover. So we also have this other category of versions of ourselves, and that includes our protective parts and our vulnerable parts. This is often referred to as inner child work, IFS, or internal family systems work. And so I just want to explain what these different subsets or versions of ourselves are. And by the way, every single part of you makes so much sense. So before we get into, again, we're going to anchor in how do I be in my truest self, let's explore these other versions. So I'm going to do a brief explanation of parts work. I have lots of episodes that go deeply into parts work, so please go listen to them. But just a brief overview. So throughout our lives, we experience hardships or traumatic experiences. And when those experiences occur, it's as if that version of ourselves fragments off our whole self. I'm holding my fist up and I'm imagining that's me, whole me, true me. And then let's say when I was 5 years old, my parents got divorced and that divorce was really traumatic. They didn't help me process what was happening. I just want to name for anyone listening who has been divorced or is in the process of getting divorced, that is not inherently traumatic for a child. It's if our caregivers didn't have the ability to help us process it. So let's say that 5-year-old me fragments off the whole. Now they're still connected to me via, I think of it like a rope. There's still a part of me, but that 5-year-old self is stuck in that experience of being 5 in 1970 or 1980 or 1990, whatever year it was. They're stuck there in the experience of feeling helpless, out of control. They feel like maybe it was their fault, and of course, a variety of other things. Then we have other versions of self that fragment off. Let's say my first heartbreak. And I didn't have people who helped me process that. And maybe it was really embarrassing and overwhelming. And I have that 16-year-old part that fragments off and is stuck in that experience. Maybe I experienced emotional abuse as a child, so I have a 12-year-old part that fragments off. So all of these parts, again, they are part of who I am, but they are stuck in that timeline or that moment in time. So what occurs is, as we're navigating our lives, I might find myself feeling like my true self, adult me. I feel good and pretty regulated. But what occurs is, as our threat detector, it's called neuroception, is scanning our environment all the time. It's looking around to see, are we safe or are we not safe? I've talked about this a lot, but we have this internal database that it looks to decide if we are actually safe or not. And so let's say it finds something that reminds it of when I experienced that emotional abuse at 12 years old. And so all of the sudden, and I'll give you an example. Let's say I'm in a work environment and I have a boss who is really dysregulated and they're hypercritical. Because of course, why are they doing that? Because of their own experience, probably where they saw that modeled or it was done to them. My boss is being hypercritical of me. What occurs is the threat detector said, whoa, this looks a lot like that emotional abuse as a child. Even though it's different, my nervous system clocks it as the same because it's similar. And so in that moment, I'm no longer a 39-year-old woman. I am a 12-year-old girl. And what happens is I leave my adult self and I go down that rope to that 12-year-old. And that 12-year-old literally inhabits my body. It's really cool, everybody, how this works. Your vagal tone or shape of your nervous system will change immediately back to what it was when you were 12. What does that mean for you? It means you will feel and experience everything you felt and experienced at 12. You'll even have the same thoughts that you had when you were 12. Your physiology will change. You might notice that you start to hunch over. I become small. My language will be more simple than the eloquent language of my adult self. Why? Because I'm not my adult me. I am now 12 years old for all intents and purposes. We're all living the size life that our nervous system currently has the capacity for. So whether you're living a smaller life than you desire or you're fully embodying the life of your dreams, this is determined by what's going on in your nervous system. So if you're wanting to expand into the life that you're desiring, I'm hosting a 3-day live event called the Expansion Experience, where I'm going to equip you with the somatic tools necessary to get you there and show you how to harness the power of your nervous system to make it all happen. Right now, I'm on the set of my podcast, You Make Sense, and I have to tell you that 2 years ago, I didn't have the capacity to do what I'm doing today. And by the way, I don't have the capacity to hold the life that I'm going to be living 2 years from now. The way that I got to where I am and the way that I will get to where I'm going is by incrementally working with my nervous system to build my capacity. And exactly what I've done in my own life, I'm going to show you how to do in yours so you can live the life you are here to live. So if you're feeling stuck in your life, or perhaps again and again, no matter how hard you try, you keep hitting up against this invisible wall, I want you to know that invisible wall actually has a name, and it's called your autonomic nervous system. I was there in my own life. I spent so many years trying to will my way towards the things that I desired, and there was no amount of efforting that got me there. But I can tell you that the work we are going to do in Expansion Experience is the key to unlocking the life you are desiring, and science confirms that for us too. I hope to see you inside this 3-day event. Now, what's really important to understand is that anything that you think or feel at any given moment is the truth to a part of you. It just might not be the truth to your adult self. But you know how us humans work? We're really, really neat creatures. That makes me sound like your grandmother, which I don't mind. We are really neat creatures though, because what we do is our systems are always making sense of everything. It's an adaptive strategy. So whatever we are presently experiencing, we look out to the world, whatever is in front of us, and we say, it must be about you, or this must be my truth, because it's what I'm currently experiencing. And then we think that truth is our adult selves' truth, when so often it isn't. When so often it's actually the truth of that younger part of ourselves. So in a minute, I'm going to give you some examples of what this has looked like in my own life in terms of parts that show up. But first, I just want to decipher the different types of parts that we all have. So there are two real primary kinds of parts. One, we have vulnerable parts. The vulnerable parts of us are the ones that experienced the overwhelm or trauma, and they were totally exposed and helpless in the experience, meaning nobody helped them to protect them or to attune and soften with them. Like, for example, you may have had a parent who, when you were bullied at school, you came home and they said, "Oh, honey, you're fine. There's far worse things you could be experiencing." Or they love you. That's why they're doing it. Or you were sad and overwhelmed. Instead of having a caregiver who could attune with you, they just made you cookies. But they didn't actually sit with you and hold you and connect with you. Also, by the way, vulnerable parts are the ones that experience the traumas, neglect, abuse, and so on and so forth. So those parts were totally exposed. Now, if they didn't have the conditions necessary to process what happened and the protection, we brilliantly and beautifully develop internal protectors. Isn't that cool? Remember I said you were pretty neat? You're pretty neat. My hope is with this podcast, you start to see how fantastic and exquisitely well-working you are. You can develop protectors at 2 years old, which is so fascinating, isn't it? For example, a baby that is not being properly connected with and attuned with emotionally and physically, they develop a protector that learns to dissociate, leave their body. So they're not here, they're not present at 2 years old. And of course, we can develop these protectors and do develop these protectors throughout our lives. What's important to know is a protector develops after a vulnerable part is left vulnerable. So the job of the protective parts are to ensure that our vulnerable parts never, ever, ever experience the type of pain that they experienced in the past. They get the worst rap. Why? Because the results or symptoms of their protection cause our suffering. But their goal is not to cause us suffering. Their goal is to make sure that vulnerable part never experiences pain. I want to give you some examples of what protectors look like. If you're like, I don't know if I have a protector. You do. We all do. Here's some examples of it. You might have an achieving protective part. That part learned that in order to be special and loved, that was not unconditional. They had to earn it. So if you achieve and you get everything right, then you'll be worthy of love. And so you know what that part does in our lives? Once we grow up, that protective part doesn't know that the past is over. That protective part doesn't know things can be different now. The only way they know how to get love, their roadmap for it is, I have to be special through achieving. I can't just be special as I am. So that's the part that can never slow down. They set a bar, you get there, they raise the bar. I had this part. As soon as I got to a place, I was like, yeah, this is really nice. I couldn't actually feel it though. And then I would just set another goal. Where is the end? There is no end, because it is this endless desire to feel like I'm worthy and enough, but it's not actually mending and healing the wound. At the same time, it has done such a service for us when these protectors show up. They save our lives. Other protectors. Fawning protector. A fawning protector is a protector that acquiesces or becomes what we think or it thinks other people need us to be or want us to be in order for us to be safe, in order for us to be loved, in order for us to belong. I also had this part. I call it the chameleon. I would go, anyone I was around, I would morph into what it is that they were or what they wanted from me. I would even do things like someone would say they loved a book. I've never read the book. And I would say, oh, that's a great book. Yeah. Because I wanted them to feel good. And later I would say to myself, what the hell did I just do? Why did I lie? I never lie, but I just lied. What was happening there? And so what I want you to see, everybody, that's the oscillation the example I just gave, that's the oscillation from being in a part, protective part. So then later I was in my adult self. And I was so wildly confused about why I had fawned. I would even start to speak the way someone else was speaking. I would agree to go to a place they wanted to go, even though I didn't want to. All of that, again, is fawning or acquiescing. That's a protective part. Other protective parts that we have, parts that learn to caretake. So codependent parts, where if I overfocus on you and I make sure you are okay and you have all of your needs met all the time, then I'll be needed. And that part learned, if I don't have this role and I don't self-sacrifice, I might be abandoned. I might not be worthy of someone staying or choosing me. So I disregard my own needs and I focus on you. Others of us have parts like the class clown. I learned that if I am the silliest and the funniest and I have to be all the time, then I can be loved and I can be important. So with that part will override my need or desire to have alone time. It'll override my need to maybe be quieter. Maybe I don't need to be in that state or that place at any given moment, but my system is saying you have to be because this is the only way you're going to be safe. Others of us have protective parts that are hypercritical. So that hypercritical nature gives me a sense of control. Because if I could just make you different, then maybe everything will be okay. Or, by the way, controlling external circumstances. That's a perfectionist part. If I can control everything around me, and also, by the way, everything inside of me and in my body, then I'll have a sense of safety. So you get the idea. We have many different protective parts. And every part has its own truth, its own reality, that we don't want to gaslight ourselves out of everyone. We want to honor the truth of every single part of us. But here's what's important. In order for you to live an empowered life that you are here to live, that is based in your adult self's truth, not based in a survival trauma response, you have to know like you know what true adult you feels like in your body. That means you also have to know what each protective part feels like in your body and what they sound like, as well as the vulnerable part. What do they feel like and sound like in my body? You cannot learn your way into this. You have to experience it. So let's just do something. I wasn't going to do this, but why not? We just go with the flow of what's arising. Let's do something together because I just want you to feel and experience this for a moment. Think of one moment in your life where you felt capable, able, present, maybe a moment where you were in flow, a moment where you were in awe. So it could be in nature. It could be a moment in flow, laughing or dancing with friends, or maybe in your purpose. You feel like really in flow. I've got this. I'm me. Just think of one moment. And what I want you to do is I want you to bring it to life using all of your senses. Like let yourself go back to it. Just one moment. What we're trying to do right now is embody adult you, true you. What you'll notice when you're here is you feel capable, you feel able, you feel competent. You know, everything's going to be okay. I often say it's like feeling like a great sequoia tree or a mountain. I am present and here. I am capable and able. This is who I am. So just notice what that feels like in your body. And the only thing that I want you to do now is I want you to just ask yourself one question. What's true? What's true? I have no idea what might arise, but I just want you to be curious about what does. 2 other prompts. Who am I? You might be surprised with words that come up. Oftentimes it's very simple. I am love. I am enough. I am worthy. Just ask yourself, who am I? And then 2 other things. What is true if you're partnered? What is true about my partner from this place? What is true about my partner? And what is true about my life? Just notice what arises. So now what I want you to do is I want you to see if you can think of one protective part you have. I'll name a few again. Protective parts are things like the perfectionist, the avoider, the achiever, the defensive part of you, the frustrated part, the part that shuts down and runs away, the part that feels like you have to earn love, the fawning part, the part that doesn't know how to slow down. Think of one part of you, okay? And I want you to think of one moment that part is present in your life. For example, it could be in your work. You have this part, this achiever part that doesn't know how to slow down. Go, 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 go. Always going, always going, always going. Maybe the fawning part that becomes what you think everyone wants you to be. So just think of that part and think of one experience in life that brings them alive. If you're still stuck, one last example. Think of the last time your partner and yourself, if you're partnered, got into a fight or friend, and ask yourself what part showed up. Who is that part? Now just bring that to life a little bit. Notice what it feels like in your body. That part is dysregulated, meaning they use your nervous system to experience active self-protection. So when that part's present, you're experiencing things like you're hustling, anxiety, worry, frustration, fear, terror, rage, disconnection, apathy, hopelessness, depression, defensiveness, fear, racing thoughts. You're either shutting down, wanting to go towards, wanting to go away. So now with this part present, ask the part, what is true about you? What is true about you? Don't censor them. Let it arise. What is true about your life? This one's important. What is true about your partner? If you're partnered or closest relationship, from this part being present. Notice what arises. Now, what I want you to notice is this sounds and feels very different from when adult you is present in your body. Why? Because it's not adult you. It's a part that developed a long time ago. It could be 20 years ago that this part developed. And they might be, for all intents and purposes, 16 years old. They are not adult you. Ask yourself, how old does this part feel? It'll clue you into when or around when they developed. We have very young adolescent parts. We have toddler parts. We have teen parts, and so on and so forth. So just get curious. How old is this part? What I want you to notice is how real their truth is. Can you feel that? Their truth is very, very different from your adult self's truth, likely. Very, very different. Last part that I want us to look at is a vulnerable part. I want you to think of any vulnerable part you may have. Those are the parts that feel things like shame. They feel unlovable, unworthy, that they don't belong, less than, afraid, overwhelmed, unprotected. All those sorts of things. Connect to that part. Think of the last experience you had or a recent experience you had where that part was present. Let's see if you can connect to that. And then I want you to ask yourself from this place, for this part, what is true? Ask that part, who am I? How does that part feel about your partner? And what is true about my life? So what I hope you could see, even just a little bit, is that we have wildly different truths that come up in our embodied experience. And the reason why so many of us struggle to know what in the world our truth, our adult self's truth, your truth of the numeric age you are today, why so many of us struggle to know what that is because we are oscillating between parts all the time. Different parts are showing up. And remember, their truth is the truth of the moment in time they experienced. But what occurs is we look out into the world again, and whatever is in front of us, we say, this is what's actually true about you. So I'm going to give you some examples of this from my own life so that you can see what this looks like to hop between parts and hop between truths. So I'm going to give first some examples from romantic relationship because that is where our parts show up more than anywhere else in our lives. Why? Because romantic relationships remind our nervous systems the most of our earliest childhood experiences. So for me, not being in a romantic relationship or being with friends, my nervous system said, oh, this is really safe because friendship was much safer than family of origin for me. So when I was with friends, I had much more moments of data points where I was fully safe to be all of me. So when it came to being with friends, I could be fully expressed as my true adult self. And I would find myself being like silly, way more playful, open, not inhibiting myself at all, very soft and warm and gentle and seeing the best in them. But you know what would happen when I get into a romantic relationship? Not at first, but once my system has associated them with family, all of the sudden, that me would kind of go out the window. So I would find myself becoming much more inhibited and more serious when it came to a romantic relationship. And I am a quite serious person, but I'm also really silly and weird and playful. And so it was very strange to me at first before I understood all of this work. Why am I so inhibited? Why can't I be me? Well, here's why. Because when I was a child, I grew up in a very unsafe home, very neglectful. I was one of 8 kids, grew up in poverty in New Hampshire. And my mother, who's a narcissist, shamed us for playing. She didn't play with us. She didn't believe in play and saw that as weakness in a lot of ways. So I learned when it came to family, don't play. That's really bad. And so what would happen is I get into a romantic relationship. And by the way, I have a very, very playful partner. And when we first got together, I noticed like, whoa, this is so weird. Why is it being inhibited? This part of me that I do have access to now. And then what can happen if you don't understand this work is I would look out to him and say, it must be because of you. And so what do a lot of us do? We have something like that occur and then we say, well, it must be the wrong relationship because I can't be my full self. And so I really want you to be wary of messages like that out there. It's a problematic nature of social media and easy access to a 30-second reel by somebody who doesn't actually understand all of this work, and all of they understand is the very surface level of relational dynamics. And people say like, if you don't feel safe in the relationship, it's not for you. That may not actually be true. Like I just said, if you can't be all of you, it's the wrong person. Couldn't be further from the truth. The example that I just gave happened to me because my system was saying, when you are with a close other person, the person that's supposed to be most important, it is not safe to be all of you. And the protector showed up. I had other protectors show up romantically and protectors that would push away intimacy. Why? Because I was never chosen truly by anyone in my life. And we're all supposed to have that experience, right? So that deep, wordless experience of not being chosen made me develop a protector that said, we will never let anyone that close to you again. Because I don't want to feel the pain of not being the most important. I'd rather never be fully chosen. So I won't let you choose me. So you know what that protector did? They would test. I'm going to test you. And I'm going to do things to push you away. Are you going to come back? I don't know. But this is all a test to see what you will do. That's a protective part. So I hope these examples are helpful, everybody, because when these protectors show up, it feels really strong in our bodies. The thoughts that they have are really strong. But do you know what those thoughts that I was having were about? They certainly weren't about my wonderful partner. They're about my mother. They might be about that person that bullied you. They might be about that teacher. People have protective parts around purpose. I had a protective part that did this, okay? They were very believable. They're all really believable because their truth is true for them based on that moment in time. I had a protector, perfectionist protector, that kept saying, yeah, you know what? It's not the right time to step into this thing. Here's why. You're so busy with all this stuff going on and it'll be too overwhelming to start that company or write that book or start that program right now or, start the podcast, whatever it is you want to do. So here's why we should wait and do it later. That's an avoiding part. That part is going to do its job to make sure you never step towards any of it. And so if we just think, oh, that must be my truth based in today without inquiring into whose truth is this actually, so many of us end up living lives that are not right for us. We're living lives that our protective parts have decided are safe for us. And here's the thing, my love, the life you are here to live is going to scare you. The life you are here to live is not meant to feel comfortable. The life you are here to live is going to require you to push to edges and beyond what is in your comfort zone. It's going to require you to go from the shallow end to the deep end. It's the way this universe works. And it invites us in to heal and do our work in the process. And here's a part of that work. We must, number one, understand who adult me is versus who all the parts are. Otherwise, you're going to be stuck not living your right life. I see people do this all the time. They leave relationships that are so good for them. They stay in relationships that are not good for them. Why? Because they have a protective part that's saying, if we're alone, we're going to die. So that protective part makes excuses for the other person over and over and over and over again because they think the alternative of being abandoned or left would be far worse. So I want you to just see here, we end up living a life that isn't right for us. We aren't able to step into our truth or our calling in our life or our purpose. So we have to begin anchoring into, who am I? You know, the beautiful thing about healing work is it's not becoming anything. It's like you're your own internal archaeologist. You are digging until you find who you are. And we have little glimpses like an archaeologist, like, ooh, that's a piece of a fragment of a bone. You dig a little more and there's another, and there's another, and there's another, until we see the entirety of who we are. That's the beautiful thing about it, is it's not efforting in the sense of I have to form or become something. You already are. When you came into this world, you were exactly right. Oh, how I wish for each of us we had an experience when we entered this world. We were met with, look at you. Look at you, you beautiful, perfect being. There is nowhere else in the world than I want to be right now than here with you. And just because you are in this family and just because you came from my body or my DNA, it does not mean that you are an extension of me. And I don't want to make you into what I want you to be. I want to know you. Show me who you are. Oh, more of you. Yeah, you're different from me. That's perfect. Be different from me. Thank goodness you're different from me. More you. Yes, you. Oh, you get angry? Yes, that's healthy and right. Oh, you don't like when I do that thing? Thank you for telling me. Oh, you love that thing? Amazing. You know, I know you might be saying like, oh my God, Sarah, nobody has an experience like that. You were supposed to, you know. I was supposed to too. And when you have that kind of experience where your truth is validated and honored and your beingness is validated and celebrated and honored, you don't question who you are. You also don't question what your truth is because your truth is always met with yes. Yes, that's your truth. If you ask a child who has not had their truth taken away from them, if I ask a child, who's your best friend? And they say, Mark. I wouldn't say, well, how do you know it's Mark? Did you ask 5 people? Did you talk to a therapist about that? Did you look it up on ChatGPT? How do you know? And the kid would just be like, she would just say, It's Mark. You ask the kid, like, do you want to go to the pool or do you want to climb the tree? Pool. Well, how do you know that? Did you research it? Is it because you just feel like your joints are a little tight and it'd probably be better for you to be in the pool and not the tree? They would just look at me so confused, bewildered. Like, what's your problem? Why don't you know your truth? They know like they know like they know. Where does truth come from? Your embodied experience. And when you have consistent lived experiences where you felt your truth in your body, you expressed it, and it was met with yes. When that occurs, you are much more anchored in truth in your adult life. The sequoia tree that's growing doesn't say to itself like, holy shit, what if I become a seal? Oh my God, am I a seal? It doesn't like look at somebody else and say another tree and say, I think I'm a seal. That would be so ridiculous, right? And I'm giving you a ridiculous example, but this is what we do to ourselves. We question so deeply who we are. And the moment we might be anchored in knowing who we are, all it takes is somebody saying, are you sure? No, I think the relationship is terrible for you. You know what they might be doing? They might be projecting their own experience onto you. And if I'm not anchored in me, do you know what's going to happen in that moment? A part is going to show up. The part that lives in confusion or questions their own reality or has to take on someone else's reality. And now I'm very confused. I thought this was my truth, and now I'm in this other truth. And again, that's the oscillation between and through our parts. So again, what are the first steps of the work? Number 1, you have to know what each version of you feels like in your body. I cannot know that for you. No one else can know that for you. You have to experience it. Re-listen to this episode, the part where I guided you through that exercise. It will help you to do that. Listen to the other episodes on parts work and come take one of my parts work programs. I have one called You Make Sense. We go deeply into it that will support you in this. The goal isn't, by the way, that we're only ever in our adult self. It's not possible. There's no perfect human out there. Here's what the goal is. I'm going to give you an example from the other day for myself. So I'm cruising along in adult me in my relationship and feeling like my adult self. I had a long work day. And then my partner took a phone call from a friend of his that he, hadn't been able to talk to in a long time. And they were on the phone for, I don't know, maybe an hour and a half. And it was getting late and we hadn't decided what we were going to do for dinner. There was a certain moment where a part of me showed up, and that part was being reminded of experiences where she was not chosen. I had a whole lifetime of experiences where I was not chosen. Now I have a partner that does stuff for me, kind things for me all the time. He is really choosing me and really showing up. But that doesn't matter when it comes to this part. All she is doing is scanning for how I might be the least important, how it might remind her of all those experiences where I was abandoned and not chosen. What was occurring was not my childhood, but it reminded the part of that enough. So what did she do? She showed up. She's very icy, this particular part. And she has a really great way of taking that soft me, who you're seeing right now, and shielding me with this liquid nitrogen dome that I'm inside of, this steel wall, and nobody is getting close when she's around. So she shuts down. Now, if I listen to her thoughts are all going to be about my past, all about my childhood. I'm not important. Why aren't you thinking about me? Why aren't you prioritizing me? I don't want to talk to you. I don't want, she flees. I don't want it to get anywhere near you. Now, for most of my life, I didn't understand any of this. So guess what? I thought it was about the person in front of me. But the goal with this work, I'm giving this example so you can see what the goal is. I was able to immediately say, not immediately, but after hearing her and feeling her for a few minutes, oh, she's here. What I don't do, and what I want you to know we don't want to do, is say, that's not true. You shouldn't feel this way. By the way, have you ever had someone do that to you? It's so annoying. It certainly doesn't make you feel better. But instead, what I had to do is say, this is not adult me. This isn't the woman I am. This is a ferocious, beautiful protector. Hi, how are you? This protector is around 16. I know her really well. I've been working with her for a very, very, very long time. And I take her hand and I say, I know that reminds you of all those things, huh? Let's remember who this person is, who he is. And I just take a minute and I show her maybe 3 or 4 things about him that make him different. Or like the kind thing he did 10 minutes before for me, or how he chooses me. And then I regulate with her. Hey, I'm here. I can do the work of protecting, so you don't have to. And all of a sudden, she feels calm and she feels safe, and adult me is back. And you know what the truth of my adult self was? I had low blood sugar and I was hungry. And so I just said, hey, I'm going to order us food and finish up your call. I'm giving you that real life example because the more that we do this parts work, instead of something overtaking you, making you leave a relationship, or it takes you days or weeks or hours to get out of something, it becomes just a little bump, a little tiny bump in the road, until it becomes, so small that it's fast within a few seconds. But we have to know who is in our body and whose truth is who. So after we differentiate from our parts, we figure out who's who in our bodies. We have to reparent those protective parts and the vulnerable parts. And then we have to practice being our adult self. Think of this like going to the gym. You could, on a daily basis, think of a moment you felt like adult you and embody that. Let it fill your physiology. You'll notice your physiology will actually change, by the way. You'll be more open. You'll feel bigger in your body, more upright. Your spine will elongate. Your breathing will sink. You'll feel like that mountain or sequoia tree that I talked about. And then from this place, I want you to inquire with yourself about what's true. Please don't start with big questions like, should I leave my job? Should I leave this relationship or whatever? Because your protective parts will come in and say, la, 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 I don't want you to know that. Instead, what's true about this moment? What's true about this week? What's something I love about my partner and what's something that annoys me? Yes, your adult self gets annoyed with your partner. That's really healthy. They get annoyed with you too, by the way. and just notice what it feels like. Yeah, that's true. I just don't love that. And that's okay. But truth from adult you is anchored and present. The next thing that's really important is when it comes to making choices in your life from a place of truth, once you find or make contact to the truth, you want to marinate in it. Go back to it again and again and again. Feel it in your body until it becomes so unwavering that you know, this is true. From that place, we can then communicate our truth with others. But it's very important to do the marinating, because if you haven't marinated in it, it doesn't feel quite real yet or sturdy. So you get connected to, hey, I really feel like I need to be compensated for differently at my job. I need to be compensated for at a higher level. So if you don't marinate in your truth, what's going to happen is you connect to it once, you go speak to your boss, and oftentimes what's going to occur on the other end is it's not going to be validated to us, and instead they do something like, wow. Well, that's a lot, and all of a sudden a protective fawning part comes in and says, I shouldn't have asked for that. I don't know what I'm thinking. You're right. I don't need it. And I've left my adult self. So the more you marinate in it, you know who you are. You know what your truth is. And it's unwavering. That's what real power is. You ever look at a tree? A big tree, an ancient old tree, an old oak tree. They're not boisterous and loud, yeah? They're just steady and anchored. That's what makes them so powerful. If you want to be more influential in your life, more powerful in your life, it is anchoring in adult you and in your truth. And we can only do that when we have tended and reparented those younger parts, and when we have marinated in this internal you that you have always been, that this work brings you back to. And from this place, I know two things. I only ever need to know my next right step. Adult you knows that. You don't need to know the finish line, just the next right step. And I know that next right step is right and will guide me to my next one. And when it comes to embodying the things in the future you want, like the relationship I want to come into, the next part of my career that I want to come into, marinate in that from adult you. This is what I do in terms of anything I ever create in my purpose. I feel an internal knowingness, like, I'm supposed to do that thing. And then you know what I do with it? I make it grow by marinating in it. Like this podcast. Years ago, I felt like, I think I'm going to do that. Which, by the way, we're going to create into a TV show. I already know that because I've felt the call to it and I marinate in it. And that's all. When people talk about manifestation work, you really need your nervous system and parts work to do that. When you do it from this place, you are unwavering. And from that place, you step into the life you are here to live, and you are guided, not by me, not by someone outside of you, but by you. Enjoying what you've heard so far and want to go deeper into somatic healing? I have a free workbook called How to Gain Control Over How You Feel, and it will help you to get in the driver's seat of your experience and step towards your desires with more ease. Check the show notes below for a link to download. So let's get to the Q&A portion of this episode.
Hi, Sarah. I'm wondering about how I can come back to trusting myself, my adult self, my inner voice after feeling like I've been depressed my whole life. I feel like ever since I've woken up, as long as I can remember, woken up depressed, so felt very shut off from my own body, my own heart, my soul. And I felt very scattered in my own mind. I feel like I jump on a lot of things and see what other people do and jump on that, but then it becomes not my true voice. So then I stop and then I do this circle again. So I guess my question is, how can I come back to me, myself, my soul, my heart? Thank you so much.
That version of you is right inside of you. It's just been hibernating. Not because it wants to keep you from living the life you are here to live, or it doesn't want to be fully expressed, but because it has not been or was not historically safe to be fully expressed. So I'm going to talk about two protective parts that you have showing up. One is this beautiful dorsal part that covered you up and put you in hibernation. That hibernation may have saved your life. Now, a symptom of the dorsal vagal complex is depression. It's a part of what it's like to be in that place. And it's not happening because anything is wrong. It's happening because at one moment in time, The danger was so big that your system said, your nervous system said, my love, we cannot fight this thing and we cannot make it go away. But what I can do is I can cover it up, cover you up so you don't have to feel the perpetual pain of what cannot be stopped. And from that place, we leave our body. It's so brilliant. So brilliant. So if you had a home that wasn't safe, your system said, my love, I can cloak you. If school wasn't safe, if that work environment wasn't safe, if that job wasn't safe, I can cloak you. And so that is a part. It's a brilliant part. And I really want you to work on befriending that part of you, seeing them for who they are. They are beautiful. They may have saved your life. I know the symptoms of their protection don't feel good, but in order for them to actually stop protecting, we first have to get to know them and see them and love them. The next thing I want to talk about is this other part that acquiesces or fawns and becomes what it thinks others need it to be in order to be safe. So what I'm hearing is you might anchor an adult self, but the moment that you're with another person or another dynamic and someone says, oh, I think this is what we should be doing, or this is what you should be doing. Yeah, I think this would be really great for you. Truth goes away and this fawning protective part shows up that acquiesces and goes down the road of being agreeable or doing the thing that they think they need to do to be loved or to be worthy. And then at some point, a part of you, whether that's true you or a protector, says, we're not going down that road. And I'm glad that part shows up because it's trying to wake you up to who you actually are. So what is really important here is that in order for that fawning part to stop fawning, you need to protect them. In order for that hibernator, that dorsal protector that cloaks you and shuts you down to stop protecting, you need to show them that you can do the protecting. The episodes on parts work will really help with this. We have to reparent them. I say this all the time, but our adult self needs to be soft and nurturing to our parts and also ferociously protective, like a lion or lioness to their cubs. When that occurs, your protectors don't need to show up and protect the way they used to. And then the next thing, I want you to make it an exercise of your life that you come into what truth is in your body. This is a big part of what I do, still do. Now it's just habituated in my life, but I was devoted to this because I was so gaslit. I remember, so much so as a kid, I remember saying I was so dissociated from the abuse I experienced. I remember saying to my stepfather who abused me and I was so dissociated, I didn't even know it was happening. And to my mother, I used to say, I think I was sexually abused. And they would say, oh, everyone feels that way. Don't tell anyone at school, but everyone feels that way. I was totally, think of how the degree of gaslighting that is, yeah? And everything was taken away. When I would say to my mom, there's nothing to eat here, she would say, you are so selfish. There's kids, around the world starving to death. Or, any need I had, I wanted her to show up for something. And so again and again, truth taken away, truth taken away, truth taken away. So for me, I had no idea what my truth was. No clue. I would go into a restaurant and not at all know what I wanted to eat. It wasn't that I was like, I'm trying to decide between two things. I just didn't know. So I want you to make it a practice of when you're in adult self, anchor an adult you, go on a walk and ask yourself, which flower do I like best? I used to do this. And then I would find a flower and I would say, this one is the best I've seen. And then I would ask myself, how do I know it's the best? Well, this one smelled really good. I love cherry blossoms. It's maybe one of my favorite smells. And I would just smell it and be like, yeah, it smells so much better. How do I know that? I feel happy. I feel warm inside. It actually makes my mouth water. Even thinking about it right now, I love the smell of those. This is how I started to come into my truth. I did not start with, what is my life's calling? That's too big of a thing at first. But I also started to ask myself around that, like, what are clues of what's my truth? And I knew I loved helping people. And what told me that? Well, when I did, I felt alive, so on and so forth. So that's what I want you to do. The more you do the parts work and come into your truth, the more you'll always be guided by your internal knowingness. Let's get to the next question we have today.
Hey, Sarah. I love your podcast so much. I'm a mental health professional and I have never found anything so valuable up until this point. So grateful for you. My question is, I have had multiple abusive relationships in my life. And I'm curious when it comes to self-doubt, how to trust yourself in terms of if you are being avoidant or if someone is actually not good for you. I have a tendency to kind of go back and forth between anxious and avoidant. So I have a disorganized attachment. And a lot of times I question my judgment when it comes to if someone is actually good for me, but I'm self-sabotaging and pushing them away, or if they actually are potentially going to re-traumatize me and be harmful. And that is the kind of dread that I'm feeling internally.
Thank you for your kind words. Thank you for the work that you do in the world. It is hard, beautiful, rewarding work. So thank you for doing it. So I relate very much to the question that you asked, and I know that a lot of people do too. The first thing I want to name is, for all of us, is the good does not feel good at first. We have to build our capacity for it. And the good does not feel good at first for our vulnerable parts specifically, and also for our protective parts. And so this is the thing. When I said it before, I get like, oh, it makes my blood boil. That's why I can't look at it at night, but before bed. But when I see things like relationship coaches say, they do this a lot, if your nervous system doesn't feel safe in the relationship, it's not for you. They are unequivocally wrong. Here's an example of this. If you experience neglect in your childhood, like me, and maybe like you, what's going to happen is that vulnerable part who never got the experience of being chosen, they were never adored and cherished and focused on and seen, even though those are your deepest human desires, those vulnerable parts are going to be really overwhelmed by it because it's totally new for them. And so an example or a metaphor I use a lot is, imagine if we were in solitary confinement for 5 years in just a dark room, and then you got out. And oh my gosh, the world is a wonderful place. There were people waiting and celebrating you, and they wanted to be around you, and you got to see the sun, and you got to hear the sounds of nature and the sounds of a city. Do you know what would happen? You'd look at the sun and you'd start to squint and you'd say, it's too bright. It's too bright. I can't keep my eyes open. And the sounds, they're nice, but they're too much. And this connection is nice, but it's too much. And you'd want to go back into that room. And you know the most confusing part about it is, because this work isn't understood, we then shame ourselves. What's wrong with me? I should feel so lucky. But instead of that, and instead of understanding the process, we try to push through. The same goes for our romantic relationships. I'll give you one from my own life. I was never chosen. It's your birthright to be chosen, by the way, but I never was. And then I met somebody who was really choosing me and putting me first and tending to me. As a kid, I never got to pick like the first piece of pizza. There actually wasn't even pizza, but you get the idea. I never got to be the one that's like, you get to pick. You get to sit in the nicest seat at the restaurant when we sit down. You get to decide what we want for dinner. You get to pick where we're going to go on vacation. I never got to have that experience, and I was married for over a decade, and that replicated a lot of my childhood, me being invisible and it not being about me. So then I met this person who really was making it all about me and tending to me. Wouldn't you think, wow, that would be really great? Not to my vulnerable part. She said, it's too much. I don't know why he's doing this. And also for her, the only tending that I got was the grooming process of being sexually abused. It's a very confusing process for a kid. So my system said, if someone's nice to me, they're going to hurt me. If someone's nice to me, they want something from me. So that little sweet girl got really scared and really overwhelmed, and also overwhelmed, like, why is this person seeing me so much? Why can they tell when I'm feeling something and ask, how are you feeling? What's going on? Oh, it was too much. So do you know what happened? I had an avoidant part just like you who had tried to push that person away. You have to get away, or I'm not ready at the beginning, like all kinds of things to try to avoid or push that away. Not because I didn't want that relationship, but because the parts were so afraid of experiencing what they experienced in the past, and also overwhelmed by the good. So how do you know what your truth? If I didn't know all of this work, I would have left that. And I would leave every good relationship. The next good relationship, I would have left that too. And again and again and again. Instead of learning, I have to build my capacity for this. And I have to show those younger parts that this is different now, that someone being kind to you isn't grooming you. They just want to make you happy. I had no experience of that in my whole life. So this is what I'm saying about how a really safe relationship can feel really dangerous. You have to build your capacity for it. What I want you to do is get clued into who those parts are. And then the second important thing is, when anchored in adult you, what is actually true? By the way, you'll know you're in true you if there are things about the person you're with, you're like, I don't love that. That thing I need them to work on for sure. If this is going to be long-term, that I have to have them work on. These other things really annoy me, but I guess I can learn to live with them. I know that might sound, you might be like, isn't that a really adult you? Yeah, of course it is. And I love these other things. It's an infatuation part of you if you think this person is just incredible and there's nothing about them that annoys me or irritates me or that I just wish would be slightly different. Or there's nothing that I have, that is absolutely needs to shift. That's a clue it's not adult you. So when you do this, you become empowered. And then I'm in the driver's seat of my life. Let's get to the next question we have today.
Hi, Sarah and Rachel. I absolutely love your podcast. In a recent episode, in this particular episode, you were talking about extrovert or introvert. And I think this is a general question in terms of as you're going through this process and, trying to figure out what is the real me and what is the trauma influenced me, and how I have also sort of relied on these, I'm just an introvert, and wanting to take care of myself. What guidance can you have on when do you sort of support what you're feeling versus kind of understand that it's coming from trauma and it's not really you, and not sort of, if you will, just coddling that behavior if you're interested in moving forward and having growth and change?
I love this question so much. So we've been talking about parts work a bit today, meaning whose truth is whose. When you have a vulnerable part or protective part, do you know what my vulnerable part said to me? I just answered the question about relationships. My vulnerable part said to me, but don't you think now that we're home with you, meaning I had an internal home, I'd done all this healing work, this vulnerable part was like, don't you think we could just have friends and dogs? She loves dogs. She's like, we could just have so many dogs. I'm not kidding. She said that. She's like, we have 300 dogs. We could rescue them. And then we could have other animals. And that would be so great. And then have friends. You could have lots of friends. And for her, that makes sense, right? Because family was really dangerous. So that sounds yummy and awesome because I was her mom now. I'd done all this work and she felt safe with me. And by the way, she would have also said, I don't think that we need to be seen by all these people in the world, helping all these people. And there's a lot of people out there. And because what if I say something wrong and it hurts someone? She was so afraid of hurting people because of the abuse. So it was really a fear of I just never want to hurt someone. And you know what? If you're out there in the world, we might hurt someone, and I'd rather die than hurt someone, is how that little part of me felt. So if I said, oh, honey, you're right. Let's just stay inside this house. With Truman, we'll get you 300 more dogs for the backyard. And that's what we'll do. We'll just live that life. I wouldn't be a good parent. Good parenting is being in charge. Good parenting is taking the hand of a kid and saying, I know it feels so scary and you don't want to go to the birthday party this weekend because it feels scary to connect with new kids because we just moved to this town. But we're going to go because this is really good for you and it's actually what you really want, to have friends. But what I would do with that kid is I wouldn't make him do the sleepover. I'd say, you know what? We're going to go for 2 hours and I'm going to stay. And I know it's going to feel scary and exhausting. And then after we'll come home and eat ice cream. Okay. And the kid would be like, I know, but I don't want to go. I don't want to go. And I don't know what to wear. And I'd say, I know it's scary. Let me help you pick something out. And it would be hard and exhausting. And then they would do it. And I would be so proud of them. And they would see it was safe. And then we do it again and again and again until you know what they'd say? I don't want you to come with me because it's not cool to have your mom there. Can you just drop me off? Don't come inside. Why are you wearing that dress? And that would be such a day to celebrate, right? Because they finally felt safe. That's being a good parent. That is what we must do with our parts. If you're waiting around for your purpose, for example, to feel good, it will not. I can tell you for myself, anytime I'm doing something new, parts that level of exposure, that level of whatever, I don't think that's safe. And I have to take that part's hand and say, I know, but I'm going to show you how this is going to be wonderful for you too. Same in my relationships. It's the same rodeo over and over again as you expand into a bigger iteration of your life. And that includes connection. Trauma is relational, meaning it happens with others. So there's a lot of people bouncing around the world that think they're super introverted, but it might not be the case. I'm not saying that you might not be introspective and need more alone time than other people. But there's a good chance as their protector saying, I don't want to connect because connection wasn't safe. So you have to take their hand just like I showed you. And when we do that, the parts start to see, hey, maybe there's a place I belong. Maybe I can connect. And less is more. The more you do it, the more you come into you, who you've always been and who you're meant to be. So let's get to the last question that we have for the episode.
Hi, dear Sarah. Hi, Rachel. First of all, I just wanted to say thank you for all your work. You Make Sense just helped me immensely. So my question is about talking to someone, having a conversation, having a small talk, just talking, which feels so exhausting to me because I try to connect and have the safe and connected feeling when I'm just talking to my loved ones. And of course, then I try to find the right words, the right thing to say, and that feels so exhausting. It doesn't feel natural, and that makes me then sad and even try harder, and then it feels more exhausting, and something in me then resists to talk, and then I feel lonely and sad, and I don't know how to just talk easily and feel connected and safe while having conversations.
I love kids. And one thing, as I was listening to this, I was thinking about what I do when I'm around my friends' kids or any kid, is my inclination is I just want them to show me who they are. Part of that probably comes from, not having that experience so much in my life, but I am so interested. You know what that means? There's nothing they could do wrong. I am showing up saying like, yeah, actually I was at my partner's friend's home and they have 2 young kids. And it's these very sweet kids, I think like 4 and 8 maybe. And the 4-year-old, who's normally really shy, her mom was like, yeah, she's not normally like this with people. She kept coming over to me. So at first she was sort of interested, kind of nervous. And I was super interested in how much she loved rainbows. She loved rainbows. She had them everywhere. And I was like, wow, this is so cool. Show me the rainbows. And she was like, I have rainbow shoelaces. I have all kinds of things. And I was like, rainbow shoelaces. I wonder where I could get rainbow shoelaces. That is so neat. And then she said, can I show you my bedroom? Or I don't think she even asked. I just said, we're going to go see my bedroom now. And so she just, everyone, all the other adults stayed. And she said, okay, come on, grab my hand. And we went and saw her bedroom. And she showed me all the things on her walls and all the things, the gifts she just got from her birthday. And I was just so interested in knowing her. And at one point I was like, okay, I think we should probably go downstairs. I'm ready to talk to the adults now. And I was like, I think I need to get some water. And it was so funny. She's like, I have water by my bedside. We could just drink this water and stay up here forever. It was so cute. And then she took it out and she's like, do you want to share this water? And I was like, let's go get some downstairs. Anyway, the point is of that whole thing, she was totally free to be her. She has wonderful parents who have made that happen. And I was mirroring to her, I like you just the way you are. Do you remember Mr. Rogers said that? I like you just the way you are. Such a beautiful thing to get. When that happens, we're never inhibited. We're just free to be who we are. We went downstairs and then her older brother, they're speaking Swedish to each other. And then he was like, do you want to see my room? You could if you want, but you don't really have to, but whatever. He's a little older, I think 7 or 8, so you got to be a little cooler. Anyway, we did the same thing. Showed me his room and, it was a thing I was doing with my friend. And then he played the piano for me. They were both sweet kids freed up to be who they are, because that's what their parents have given them, and it's what I was giving them. I'm sharing that because what you're saying indicates for me you didn't get that. I didn't get that either. You may have had loving parents, but they didn't know how to do that for you. And so they said, oh, honey, why did you draw a giraffe? I feel like it would have been better as if it was a lion, don't you think? What's the message in that moment? You did it wrong. It's a wrong idea. Even loving parents did that. Oh, honey, why did you pick that out? Stripes and polka dots don't go together. Oh, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm not right. Or you're frustrated. Oh, and they said, stop it. Don't do that. I'm not right. So then what happens is we get into our adult lives and we fawn. I become what everyone wants me to be. I think about what I'm going to say before I say it. You ever done that? I know this person listening has. It's freaking exhausting. So exhausting. And you know what happens? You leave the relationship, that experience, dinner, going out with someone. You feel totally unseen because you weren't seen. Only the protective part was. And you feel tired because you weren't getting nourishment. There wasn't reciprocity. What's supposed to happen in a relationship is we give to them, they give to us. We give to them, they give to us. I show up just as I am. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to connect with any living being who you feel like you can be yourself around. If you find this podcast helpful, put the podcast on. And I want you to sit, walk, do whatever, lay down, whatever you want to do, and let your face be what it wants to be. When you're fawning, you morph your face into what you think it needs to be. I'm smiling when I don't want to smile. Just let your face be what it needs to be. Place your hand on your heart and feel what is present. Put your hand on a tree. Let the tree connect with you and see if you can be all of you in the presence of that tree. If you have a pet, great thing to do. Can I be all of me with this animal? You already are if you have a pet, by the way. Everyone who owns a pet, the reason people love them, one of the reasons is they, for a lot of us, create so much safety. You feel like you can be all of you. Like anyone listening do weird songs to your pet? Just me? I do really funny, weird songs, and I cannot sing. But with Truman, I can do anything. Isn't that beautiful? And that's the gift that we get to have through other living beings who create that safety for us, and then we can translate it to humans. So first you tolerate that, and then you decide who is a living human that I can do it with. Step by step, bit by bit. The more you do this, the more your parts see it's safe to be me. It's safe to take on off the mask, and relationships become nourishing places. So my friends, thank you for joining me in this episode. My hope is that it really decodes for you who you are. By the way, who all of you is, because your parts have a place in your life too. The more we do this work, the more they integrate into us, the more that we know who we are, and the more we know what our truth is. And that is our internal compass guiding us every step of the way into the life we are here for. Enjoying this episode and want to go even deeper into somatic healing? You can join my email community for weekly teachings, tools, and live events. Click the show notes to join.